What if the monster you created came back stronger than ever, hunting you in the shadows of your own city? In this ultimate battle, Spider-Man faces his darkest enemy, Venom. With a symbiote more dangerous than ever, can Peter Parker save New York, or will his past sins catch up with him? The symbiote saga begins now. Prepare for an epic showdown like you've never seen before. The city was always alive. New York, in all its bustling glory, never slept. But tonight, there was an unsettling undercurrent in the air, one that Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man, couldn't shake. The streets felt off. It started with a flicker, a shadow in the corner of his eye. Spider-Man had been on patrol for hours, his spider sense tingling just a little too often, but not enough to warrant full-on alert. At first, he thought it was nothing more than a shadowed figure or a false alarm. But something told him that tonight would be different. It was a sound that caught his attention first. The low growl that reverberated through the alleyways. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up, his instinct screaming at him to run. But Spider-Man was never one to back down from a challenge. Swinging through the air, Spider-Man landed gracefully on the roof of a nearby building, his senses sharpened as he surveyed the scene below. That's when he saw him, Eddie Brock. But something was wrong. Eddie's eyes were wild, his demeanor frantic, as though he were in the grips of something monstrous. He was no longer the disgraced journalist that Peter had once known. The man he had once called an adversary was now wearing a dark symbiote, a twisted, alien creature that clung to Eddie's body like a second skin. The symbiote had returned. Peter's heart sank. He'd faced this enemy before, but he knew he wasn't prepared for what was to come. The symbiote, the very thing that had nearly destroyed him once, was back. And this time, it had found its perfect host in Eddie Brock. Spider-Man's mind raced. He had to act fast, but this wasn't just another fight. The symbiote's power was unlike anything he had ever encountered, its unpredictability and raw strength always keeping him on edge. As Venom, it was even more dangerous. "I'm not going to let you destroy the city, Brock," Spider-Man muttered under his breath, his fingers tightening around the web-slinging device at his wrist. Venom's laugh echoed through the night air, the sound sending a chill down Spider-Man's spine. "Oh, Spider-Man, this time, you'll see who's truly the monster." And then, the fight began. Venom's first move was as brutal as it was swift. His massive form lunged at Spider-Man with an inhuman speed, knocking the hero off balance. The sheer force of the impact sent Spider-Man tumbling backward, crashing into the side of a building. He groaned, trying to push himself up, but Venom was already on him, his black tendrils wrapping around Peter's limbs, constricting like iron chains. "You think you can stop me? You think you can stop what you created?" Venom sneered, his voice a guttural mixture of Eddie and the symbiote's chilling tone. Peter struggled, his muscles burning as he fought to free himself. The symbiote's strength was overwhelming, more than he had ever anticipated. His webs, normally a surefire weapon against most enemies, were useless against the living nightmare that was Venom. With a grunt, Spider-Man managed to shoot a web upward, using the building to swing his body out of Venom's grasp. He landed in a crouch on a nearby rooftop, eyes narrowing as he assessed his foe. "I didn't create you," he said, breathless. "I was just trying to help. But you chose this path." Venom growled, the symbiote's tendrils snapping in the air like whips. "You're wrong. You've always been wrong, Spider-Man. I was born from your weakness, your guilt, your failures. And now, I will make you pay for them." Peter's mind raced as he dodged another strike from Venom's claws. The sheer speed of the attack, nearly too much for him to react to in time. But Peter had faced impossible odds before. He wasn't about to give up now. He needed a plan. Venom's strength and speed were incredible, but he knew that the symbiote was vulnerable to sonic vibrations. The last time they had fought, Peter had used a sonic device to drive the creature back. He didn't have that tech on hand now, but he could improvise. The fight intensified as Spider-Man and Venom tore through the streets of New York. Buildings cracked, Cars were thrown aside, and the city's skyline trembled under the weight of their battle. Spider-Man's body ached with every punch, every impact, but he pushed through, his mind focused on one thing: stopping Venom. "You can't stop me, Parker," Venom taunted, slamming Spider-Man into the ground with a force that left the hero gasping for air. "You'll never be strong enough." Peter's thoughts raced. He had to find a way to separate Eddie from the symbiote. If he didn't, Venom would destroy everything in his path. In the chaos of the battle, Peter noticed something, a flicker of humanity in Eddie's eyes. For a brief moment, the rage faded, replaced by a flicker of hesitation. That was the opening Peter needed. "Come on, Eddie," Spider-Man called out, his voice filled with determination. "I know you're in there. The symbiote is controlling you, but you can fight it. You're better than this." For a split second, Eddie hesitated, his body convulsing as if fighting the symbiote's control. But then Venom's voice roared in his head, overwhelming Eddie's will. "No, you're weak, Eddie. You're nothing without me." Venom lashed out once more, but Peter was ready. Using every ounce of his strength, Spider-Man swung through the air, narrowly dodging the symbiote's deadly claws. He needed to get Eddie out of the symbiote's grasp, but how? Then, he remembered the sonic vibrations. With a quick move, Spider-Man pulled out his makeshift sonic device, a small gadget that emitted pulses capable of weakening the symbiote. He aimed it directly at Venom. The effect was instantaneous. Venom let out a shrill, inhuman scream as the sonic pulses began to tear at the symbiote's form. Eddie's face twisted in agony, but Spider-Man didn't stop. He knew he had only moments before the symbiote would adapt and become stronger. "Eddie, fight it!" Peter shouted, his voice pleading. Venom's grip on Eddie began to loosen, but the battle wasn't over yet. The symbiote was relentless, and it wasn't about to give up without a fight. The final showdown took place on the rooftop of a towering skyscraper. The wind howled around them as Venom and Spider-Man clashed once again. But this time, Spider-Man wasn't alone in the fight. He had one last trick up his sleeve, an amplification device that would increase the sonic frequency to a level capable of tearing the symbiote apart. But first, he had to keep Venom distracted. Spider-Man used his webs to his advantage, spinning complex webs around Venom, attempting to bind him long enough to set up the device. The symbiote fought back furiously, each movement a violent struggle for dominance. Finally, Spider-Man triggered the device. The sound was deafening. Venom howled as the amplified sonic waves cut through the air, weakening the symbiote's form. Eddie, caught in the grip of the alien force, screamed in pain, the symbiote writhing in response. "Eddie!" Spider-Man shouted, his voice full of desperation. "This is your chance. Get out while you can." Venom struggled, his form flickering between the symbiote and Eddie's human self. For a brief moment, Eddie's eyes met Peter's, filled with a mixture of pain and regret. With a final, anguished scream, Eddie managed to break free from the symbiote's control, the creature recoiling in fury. But it wasn't over. The symbiote still wanted Eddie, still wanted to destroy everything in its path. But Peter had one last move. With all his strength, he used his webs to trap the symbiote, swinging from building to building, weaving the webs tightly enough to immobilize it. The battle had ended. For now. As dawn broke over New York, Spider-Man stood alone on the rooftop, watching as the city slowly came to life. The battle with Venom was over. Eddie had been freed, but the symbiote wasn't gone for good. Spider-Man knew that he would have to face it again. But for now, Peter could only hope that Eddie Brock would find peace and that the darkness of Venom would remain locked away. For a little while longer.